Hello, my name is Amy Siegel, and I am ASA's Director of Programs.
And I'm Tina Wiseman, a Strategic Planning Specialist with ASA, and I work with all of the SI2 schools. First thing we're going to do is just a quick review of where we are up to this point. This is during the first semester. Of course, we were implementing the current SIP, so it's sort of a dual thing right now. Last spring, the current SIP that's in place was built. It was put into place with the beginning of the school year. It's running along kind of under that little humming that goes on. That's just keeping everything going every day. But now, since it's the second semester, we are getting to the point to where now we are creating next year's SIP. So it's really, it's not really a balancing act because everything is up, running, and should be in good shape. So what we're looking at now is, given who we are now and the new student data that we have, the latest, newest data, what adjustments do we need to make to our SIP?
We started that off this year. Last month, we did the goals update. Before that, in first semester, as Tina said, we were looking at our interventions and how they were getting implemented. Last month, we had to discuss an update to your goals. And today, we're going to talk about root causes. And Tina, I'll let you.
All right. As Amy and I said earlier, root causes are near and dear to our heart because anybody can look at numbers, anybody can just kind of haphazardly throw things into place. But what we're talking about now are the root causes, are the things that are getting in the way. And that is so important that we really have those discussions.
Root causes answer the question, why aren't more students reaching the benchmarks in our goals? So, like I said to your steering team earlier, we're looking at the why. Why are the kids already there? And we find that root causes may be general and things that impact all subjects, all your courses and all your standards, things like poor attendance, lack of discipline. Those are often school culture things that when we change those things, it changes everything in our school and achievement goes up in lots of subjects.
As you'll recall at the last meeting, we talked about PAIs and SMART goals. And that was narrowing down the specific areas, sometimes a specific subject or a course or a standard that you were looking at and you weren't satisfied with where it was currently at. So those scores need to come up. So some examples of this would be lessons on ratios that are absent from a 7th grade curriculum. Maybe that students, and here's examples of the root causes of that. So when you look at low grades on maybe one of the masteries of standards, then you get into, as Amy said, the why. And so then you see that you start talking about and pulling out what's going on to keep this data from moving. Root causes are supported by data, and that's what makes everything click. When you look at the data, you're going to see that 7% of the students are absent more than 10 times during the school year, according to school records. As we all know, kids have to be in the seats. They have to be in attendance to know what's going on. So, of course, the root cause there would be there's some poor attendance going on. Another one might be with student engagement. On a survey, the surveys that we get, it could be that 67% of all students reported that instructional practices are not engaging. And there again, sometimes you're going to have those ouch moments. It's very good to get the mindset right now that we're not picking on or at any specific group, but we're just looking at some cold, hard data. And so we have to pay attention. And if 67% of the kids say that they're not engaged, then there is a student engagement problem. And so that's something that needs to be attended to.
One of the reasons that we say that root causes are supported by data is that if we don't have data to support it, it's just a hunch. And so
Right.
what you might think is a problem, it might not really be a problem at all. It could be that lots of our kids report that they are engaged and that something else is the problem. So when we back up our hunches with data, then we know where to focus. What we find is that schools that improve tend to carefully identify both general and specific root causes for each SMART goal, and then they implement interventions to address those root causes. Oh, our slide's not showing. So, so our big question when we look at data is why aren't our students achieving at a higher level?
And we're
So
not checking out the ATA. We do have data.
no, yeah,
Which will show up on your slide.
there was a data there. There was a D moved over. So we're looking for clues in the data. When we examine our achievement goals, the SMART goals, we're going to start going through our data and looking through the reports. What we have reports are will be in this discussion up in instructions, and we'll go over where to find those later. But as you see, we have expectations, curriculum rigor, instruction, classroom assessment, extra help, student guidance, and learning environment. And those are the 7 areas that we have found over the last going on 30 years that those are the areas that if you make changes there, you really can move achievement data. Those are your biggest bang for the buck.
As we continue that search for those clues in the data, remember that we have a lot of good data now. A lot has been captured there. We have report contents. We have that wonderful survey that those of you who are in update 3, you have brand new shiny survey material. Those of you who are in update 1 and 2, you have fairly new shiny survey material, and you can always redo your surveys. If you know that there's something just out there and it's really bothering everybody, throw in a survey. And remember, those survey questions are answered by students. Remember, we always ask for 95% of the students. We ask for 95% of the teachers. We ask for at least 30 in the parents and community. And the reason that we do that is because we all know if 2 or 3 people, and it kind of goes back to that the student discussions, a handful of people is not going to give you nearly the data and nearly the depth of the data that you're going to get from asking as many people as you can that are associated in some way with your school. And then, very near and dear to my heart are those wonderful short answers. And I know sometimes you wonder why on earth we put you through that. But those short answers, I love reading those because I think when you get it down to where you see what all it is that you're doing and maybe overdoing or underdoing or whatever, that's going to give you a tremendous amount of information. So here's just one of the sample survey data, and this is from the survey, a student survey. And you can see this one is, I expect myself to continue my education after high school. And so you can see when that breaks down, it's always interesting because 88% of the students say, sure, I do, I agree. 100% of the parents, why, absolutely, of course, he or she is going to continue education after high school. There already is a little bit of a disconnect, and that's something obviously that people need to talk about. Look at the community. It went down to 56%, and you had 32 people there, so you've got a good little sampling. And they're saying, I don't know. They're looking at it more from a business point of view, and they're saying, is our economy healthy enough? So, they have their point of view, which is very important to hear. And then your teachers. I expect almost all my students to continue their education after high school. Put teachers and parents in that same room together with that discussion, and you see all the disconnects that are going on. And you also see that none of the parents disagree or are unsure about that, as opposed to, the numbers are pretty high there. for the other groups that are just saying, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with this or not. So excellent, excellent data to have those discussions.
I just want to point out that in the survey reports, we always give you first the question that the students answered, followed by the parent, the community, and the teachers. That way you have all the wordings exactly as they appear on those surveys. We like to make it clear and make sure that you have a really good picture of what everybody was answering. So just a little format thing. Oh, and there are arrows.
There are the arrows. Okay, and then we have the root cause data report, and here's that wonderful expectations report. And like Amy said, she'll show you how all these print out and work so well here in a little bit. But there again, I know it's a lot of questions, but when you really start looking at that, you're going to see the picture of your school in ways that you don't ordinarily have time to look at it. And it's going to give you, it's going to give the council, it's going to give everybody some really good information to have some really good, solid conversations that are very specific to the SMART goals and what's going on and getting that data moving. So here we have an example of a PAI. Increase the percent who passed 10th grade I-STEP math. Now, the old way used to be, okay, we want kids to pass I-STEP math in 10th grade. So we're going to tell them they really need to pass it. And the kids are going to say, we really need to pass it. But that's not giving us some real specific things of assurance that knows it's going to happen. So looking at our PAI, we want the 10th graders passing math. Our SMART goal, we say, we don't want the whole ball of wax here. We want the ones who can master linear equations on that 10th grade I-STEP. So all of a sudden, that nice, sharp SMART goal. And then look at the root causes. And I can remember when we had these discussions, that first one was probably one of our biggest problems, is that it is not reinforced over time in math instruction. We looked at scope and sequence, and there would be these big gapping holes. And then, you know, as if we expect everybody to remember everything year after year. Another thing a lot of times is that the extra help just doesn't exist outside of the classroom. And so, you know, we have to seriously look at that as a time issue, but these kids still need this help. And then also the students report on a survey that the classroom discipline is making learning difficult. There again, not only that survey, but go back to those very invaluable student summaries and the council summaries and all that information, because I will tell you, after reading hundreds and hundreds of these, especially the students' information, it is out of the mouth of babes. They have some very, very good insight. So never shortchange that information. Looking ahead then to root causes for the council discussion. Now we're going to look at study data, and we're going to find out where do we find all of this data. And to do that, I will turn it over to our IT guru, Miss Amy.
In your discussion, if you're doing the online discussion, over at the top right, we have a section called instructions. And this set of instructions is loaded with links, as you'll see. Most council members really find it helpful for this particular discussion, if you're doing this online or if you're doing it in person, to work with paper. So we strongly recommend that you print these things out. And I know that in some places where we're working off of smartphones or in the library, depending on where our council members are able to view this, you might not have access to a printer. So I strongly recommend, and you'll see over right above the video, it tells you who your council discussion point person is and how to get a hold of him or her. And you can ask them if they can get you these hard copies so that you can go through the data. Tina and I, we are highlighter, sticky note people. when we start going through these reports, we like to circle things, make notes, highlight, because we really, we feel like sleuths. We're really looking at why are we not achieving in this particular area. So the very first thing that you're going to get is the SMART goals report, so that you know these are the areas that we're focused on for the coming year, and this is what I need to find out. Why aren't students achieving in the areas of our SMART goals? Another one that is very key to print, just to help you as you're doing this work, is the root cause review help sheet. And I'm going to show you what that looks like, but it is number 3 in your instructions. And here is a copy of that. So you'll see that your SMART goals are listed down the main part of the page, and then we've given you space to write in, as you're going through the data, to write in your possible root causes, and then down here where your goals are listed, you would then just check. So whenever I have a possible root cause, I want to look and check off which of the goals would be related to that root cause. Which, if I change this root cause, which of my goals would get better? And then, because again, we always want evidence, down at the bottom, you'll cite your evidence for that root cause. So if it comes from your survey report, if it comes from the short answer questions, you'll just put those down across the bottom. So, and this will help you in your discussion. Taking these notes as you go along will help. So then the root cause reports. We break the root cause reports down into the areas that I listed earlier: the expectations, curriculum, instruction, classroom assessment, extra help, student guidance, and learning environment. The survey is given every 3 years, and depending on when your school most recently gave the survey, it'll give the year in step 4, so that you have an idea of how old this data may or may not be. And the reason for new root causes, the reason we go over this, even though our data, we only do it every 3 years, the reason that we want you to look at it is that perhaps you successfully addressed the root causes in your last SIP, your last school improvement plan. If you have fixed a situation, and it's time then to look at what's the next thing we need to work on. It could also be that perspective has changed, that something has happened in our school that we need to look at in a new way. And so we go back to the data and pour through that and see what it is we need to do. We also have some optional data reports, and I call these reports for super sleuths. And these are the drill down reports. When you're looking at your SMART goals, you could very well see SMART goals for students in specific grades, specific genders, specific ethnic groups. We have drill down reports where you can see the student survey questions, the responses for all students, and then just for the group that you're wanting to examine. So those include grade level, gender, race and ethnicity, lunch program status, free or reduced, 21st century scholars, IEP status, parental college, typical report card grades, and we also allow you to create a student group. So if you're wanting to look at boys who are on the lunch program, you can create that student group. Oh, did I? Whoops. Let me go back. Sorry, that's a little harder than I thought. Okay. Additionally, we have these optional reports that get into our self-studies. And if you really want bonus points, you can pour over those and see how we've answered questions that deal with, that satisfy Indiana rules and regulations, Title I school-wide requirements, and Title I TAS requirements.
And I'm going to chime in and say, please, 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 please look at those self-studies. And I'll give you a quick example that probably most of you can relate to. When you're going down through and you're answering those questions, most everyone has really positive answers on most of those questions. But the one that I see that keeps running up to the top is parent involvement. You're not satisfied with your parent involvement, the level of it, what kind it is, and all of that. But then very seldom do I see that showing up as an actual root cause that then is going to have an intervention. So really pay close attention to those self-studies in all those areas. And if you see something that's a no, that it's not satisfying you at the time, then let's hop to it and get digging on it, because that very well could be the bugaboo in your achievement data.
The next task for our council, after you've reviewed the data, poured through that and made your notes, we're going to have you answer questions. And if you're doing this face-to-face, you'll be working usually in groups and talking to your steering team. For those of you who are online, you'll have the online form to fill out. And the questions are the same, whether you're online or you're in person. So in part one, we'll have you answer questions about each of the current root causes. So we'll give you the root cause. So in this case, student behaviors interfere with learning. And we'll ask, do you want to continue this root cause next year or omit this root cause next year? So maybe we've done a lot of work on student behavior and we've seen a lot of progress. We don't feel like we need this to be something we concentrate on now. If you choose to continue this root cause, there's a follow-up question. What revisions, if any, should be made to this root cause for the next year? So if we've written that in a way, if it's student behaviors interfere with learning, and we want to say student behaviors, I'm trying to think of an example, something more specific, you might want to add to that. You would do that and then just save your comments. In part two, we'll ask you if you have additional root causes that should be addressed. And we give you a format for writing that, and that'll make things a little easier for your steering team as they're putting all of this together. So we've asked you to please write your response in this format to increase the percentage of the student group who academic benchmark. You get that from your SMART goals. And then the next part is increase the percentage of all students who, oh, I'm sorry, the next part is what we need to address. So we're increasing the percentage of all students who earn a B or better on their report card in English, or increase the percentage of their grade boys who read at grade level. Those sound like goals. I'll have a look at that and go over it, but we'll make sure that that makes sense. So, but at any rate, if there are any root causes that you feel need to be added to your school improvement plan for the coming year, this is where you're going to put those comments in. And then in part three, we give you some space for additional thoughts. If there's anything else that concerns you that didn't fit in to the other questions, this is the place to voice your concerns or just any thoughts that you have in the additional thoughts.
So now, after today, the steering team will consider the council input, and I think you're going to have some really good thought and really be encouraging to get people to contribute. Consider this student body input. You know, Amy and I are really fans of that, so make sure that you see that. Consider those state and federal requirements. They're not just hoops to jump through. There are definitely some good questions there that you need to look at. Create your root cause list, and then send the root cause list to the council members to ask for consensus.
So be on the lookout for that. your council, there's a council, or I'm sorry, a steering team person whose job it is to seek consensus from the council. So you'll be asked for feedback, and please make sure you get back in touch with your steering team so they know that they have consensus on the root causes. So that is it for our council discussion for root causes. If you have any questions, be sure to ask your steering team. And we thank you so much for participating on your School Improvement Council. What you're doing really does make a difference for kids. Even though sometimes it just feels like you're going through a lot of paper, it really does make a difference when you're being thoughtful and thorough with this.
You've got some really good steering team members there that are working really hard, and everybody working together. The worst thing that can happen is your kids will just do better. So have a good evening. Thank you.